Touchstone conducted a payday payroll symposium on the 14th of November 2023. Among the speakers was George Makings, who gave an informative presentation on arbitrations. He mentioned that conciliation is not something that happens often, hence there is arbitration.
Conciliation creates an environment within which nobody has authority to do anything. It can only be done by consent. So the Ministry of Labour doesn't issue a determination as such, it just seeks to find common ground between the two parties. If common ground is found, then he will issue a certificate of settlement.
He also looked at the process of arbitration.
An arbitration is a process whereby the parties appear in front of the person appointed as an arbitrator, and that person is then addressed by the parties. Parties give their version of the events to the arbitrator, usually through statements of claim, statement of response, etc. And then ultimately the arbitrator will look at the arguments that have been raised and he will make a decision.
He highlighted that some of the challenges with arbitration was the lack of a regulatory board, but the government intervened.
The problem with it was that there was no control. There was very little control as to who became arbitrators, and there was even less control as to what fees would be charged. The end result of that quite often is that absurd fees were charged by arbitrators, and government then intervened to create legislation be brought in through regulation to regulate the process of arbitration through the Department of Labour. I think as a result of the discussions and dialogue that preceded the amendments to the Labour Act brought in by Act Number 11 of 2023, we now have a new system of dispute that can be pursued in front of a Labour officer. The process still begins with conciliation. So the process is still one where the two parties in dispute will go to a Ministry of Labour official with their dispute, and they will seek the Ministry of Labour official's assistance to find common ground.
George Makings also touched on the process of settlement, highlighting that it's not something to take lightly.
A process of settlement through a certificate of settlement is something you should not enter into lightly. There is no second option here. Where you sign a certificate of settlement and you've now settled a dispute, that certificate is enforceable as a claim against you if you're the employer.
He also highlighted that there is a time frame in which things should be done.
The way the law works is that there is a process within which conciliation can take place by way of a time frame, 30 days. That can be extended if the parties mutually agree to extend it. Most of the time, if you haven't got a process of conciliation leading to a settlement in 30 days, the chances are you're not going to get a settlement. You might as well move on.
George Makings mentioned that there are two types of arbitrators, and only voluntary arbitrators are the only ones allowed to charge for their services.
Voluntary arbitrators who can charge for their services. The ex officio arbitrators have to provide their service for free because they are paid by either the government or the NEC. So clearly, if you want to have an arbitration that doesn't cost you anything, then you would go for an ex officio arbitration. The downside to that is that because it's free, obviously it's more popular, and you'll find it takes longer and longer for those arbitrations to be dealt with while you wait for a suitable ex officio arbitrator to be available.
He also highlighted that there is no difference in how a matter of arbitration is handled, as they'll maintain the same structure.
The way arbitrations work is that when you go to conciliation in the hope that you are going to be able to find common ground, obviously you need to address the issues that are of concern to you as a party to that arbitration process with the conciliator in sufficient detail for him to understand the basis of the dispute and to see whether you can find common ground. But additionally, it's important for you to fully articulate your view to the conciliator because the conciliator will decide, in referral of the matter to arbitration, he will decide what the terms of reference are for that arbitration.